We are now at a very advanced stage of discussions. I think we could be hours away from being able to finalise all of the aspects of the withdrawal agreement that relate to Gibraltar and all of the moving parts that relate to that also. I would describe this a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle. It's not until you've got all the pieces in the right place that you can see the whole picture as it actually is. Seeing just one part of the jigsaw puzzle might confuse you into thinking that the picture is something else. So I think we are close enough that we can allow ourselves to be optimistic. Of course, we all know what happens in this type of negotiation, especially given the types of parties that we're dealing with at 5 minutes to midnight. I think the clock has stopped. It is 5 minutes to midnight, and we're not going to allow anything which changes the picture that we've been negotiating in any radical way, but we're ready to spot any attempts to do that.
But you say that there are still a few details to iron out. What are those details? Well,
look, I think it's important that you see the whole picture, as I've said, and not just some details. Some of those details might distort the picture in one way or on another. I have a very clear view of what that picture should be for the people of Gibraltar, and when it is static and it is fixed and agreed, then I'll be in a position to explain what the whole package entails. But I think the important thing now is to keep in mind that whilst you're hearing about problematic aspects of other parts of the withdrawal agreement, you're not hearing that about Gibraltar.
What about the airport agreement? Is that a stumbling block for us?
Well, I mean, Gibraltar has taken a position in relation to the airport for some time. The GSLP took a position in 1987. I'm the leader of the GSLP. The GSLP hasn't changed its view. The leader of the Liberal Party that's in coalition with us has the same view, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to talk themselves into persuading anybody in the Gibraltar cabinet today to take a view contrary to the view that we've taken in the past.
Fine, but is the fact that you're not going to be persuaded any other way a stumbling block to negotiations with Spain and the UK?
No, I don't think it is a stumbling block between the parties to these negotiations, because people will understand that there is a very clear position, and that clear position, if it is not going to enable other parties to take us where they want to take us, means that that matter is not going to be resolved in the way that they wished. But it is not something that we are saying and we're not prepared to discuss. It's just something on which we have fundamental red lines which we are not prepared to shift.
Okay, and on tax agreements, etc. We know that the Financial Secretary is in Madrid in discussions related to these issues. Is that something that could provide a hiccup along the way as well?
No, I think it's part of the architecture of what we want to do. Gibraltar has been offering tax information exchange agreements. When I arrived as Chief Minister, I saw that my predecessor had agreed the substance of a tax information exchange agreement, but that there were issues about being able to complete it. We want to go a little further than that. We want to be more ambitious than that and really create the sort of relationship that neighbours would have in relation to tax. Whether we'll be able to finalise that as part of the architecture of the whole of the agreement, so whether that will be slightly separate because it is more complex, it is a freestanding...
So an agreement could be made without this particular issue on the table?
Yes, indeed. I think we've advanced the discussions a lot, but I don't know whether we will be able to finalise agreement on that or indeed on some of the other aspects of what is being discussed.
Okay. Chief Minister, we've heard from Josep Borrell, the Spanish Foreign Minister, who was at the European Council summit, or ahead of the summit this week, and he was interviewed by journalists today in Europe. And he was specifically making reference to Gibraltar, saying that Gibraltar is not the problem. We're going to hear what he said today.
I don't think Gibraltar is a problem. There is a protocol in the draft agreement, and this protocol was agreed with the United Kingdom. So Gibraltar is not a rock on the way.
That's good news. So you're happy that by Wednesday, by the summit, the issue won't be Gibraltar, it really will be still Northern Ireland and sorting out, avoiding a hard border?
This is another question. It seems more difficult to solve than Gibraltar. But, you know, in Europe, agreements never come before the end of the time. We don't have to dramatize. We still have time. I think we still have 1 month.
Josep Borrell, the Spanish Foreign Minister, there saying that Gibraltar is not the problem and nowhere near as big a problem as Northern Ireland. That will, if you were feeling optimistic, that will fill you with a little bit more optimism as well.
Well, I think he's reflecting on exactly the same facts that I am reflecting on. And Mr. Borrell will have heard me say similar things today to GBC Radio at lunchtime. So I think we're all on the same page, but we are clear on our side that there are still some things that need to be done to complete, as I say, the architecture of everything that is going to be put before us, so that we know the full picture of what emerges is what we believe we have negotiated, and that there aren't at the last minute changes of tenses or words that might in some way affect the meaning of things, or indeed the commercial arrangements that we are still to complete in respect of one or two aspects of the discussions and negotiations.
And in London today, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, made a statement to the House of Commons. It wasn't quite as optimistic as perhaps we've heard from you or Josep Borrell, and there was a slight hint there that the UK might be bracing itself for a no-deal scenario. Let's just hear what she had to say in the House of Commons today.
We have been clear that we cannot agree to anything that threatens the integrity of our United Kingdom. And I'm sure the whole House shares the government's view on this. Mr. Speaker, I do not believe the UK and the EU are far apart. We both agree that Article 50 cannot provide the legal basis for a permanent relationship, and we both agree this backstop must be temporary. We cannot let this disagreement derail the prospects of a good deal and leave us with the no-deal outcome that no one wants. I continue to believe that a negotiated deal is the best outcome for the UK and for the European Union. I continue to believe that such a deal is achievable, and that is the spirit in which I will continue to work with our European partners, and I commend this statement to the House.
Now, Chief Minister, if there is a no-deal scenario, is everything that has happened on your part academic? So the question is really, if there is no deal between the UK and the EU, does an agreement between Gibraltar, Spain, the UK and the European Union, is that still possible?
Well, I think it's important to reflect on what Theresa May was talking about. She was talking about the Irish backstop issue, the Northern Irish backstop issue, which is the issue that is vexed in the context of the negotiations. Your viewers will have read and seen what the discussions are about. Later in that programme, or later in that session in Parliament today, an emergency session where the Prime Minister asked to intervene to make a statement to the House, she went on to answer a question from Liz McInnes, MP from the Labour Party, about the issue of Gibraltar. She was very confident about the Gibraltar issue and the fact that Gibraltar would be included in the withdrawal agreement, as she has said from the very beginning. And I thought it's important to reflect on how the Prime Minister approached the issue of Gibraltar. The question you're posing is, if there is no withdrawal agreement, in other words, the opposite of where we started this discussion 24 months ago, if there is no withdrawal agreement, is there an agreement about Gibraltar? I think that we have the basis of what might be an agreement, that might be something that the European Union, the United Kingdom as the member state, Gibraltar as the part of the member state, and Spain as the neighbouring member state might see as the way that we regulate the relationship to create a transition as we deliver a soft landing with future arrangements, because then we would have no transitional period set out in a withdrawal agreement to apply to us. So de facto, maybe de jure, we may have found the arrangements that we want in those circumstances, but let us put those circumstances to one side. We must plan for them. We are planning for them in terms of the eventualities that may materialise. The government of Gibraltar does not take for granted that there would be a withdrawal agreement, and so we have to plan for those circumstances. But let us give this process an opportunity, because as Donald Tusk said today after the Prime Minister made a statement in Parliament, in his letter to the 27 other leaders of the European nations, he said everything is impossible until it happens. And that's what European negotiations, as we know, have been about in history. Deals are done at 5 in the morning, that at 11 o'clock in the evening the night before did not appear possible. So I think we have to give Theresa May the credit for where she has got us to. Look at where she was 26 months ago when she became Prime Minister. Look at where we are now. All of the things that she has agreed, we were hearing along the way, were going to be impossible to agree. We're almost there. There's one small part of the agreement to go. Gibraltar is not going to get in the way of that agreement. As Josep Borrell said, we are not the rock on the road. So let's hope that all of Europe has the benefit of an orderly withdrawal of the United Kingdom.